Hi, now we're going to talk about the UV light transmittance apparatus and specifically how to prepare your samples. So to start, based on however many samples you're going to run, you're going to have a set amount of glass slides and cover slips. With that, you're going to need to UV cleanse those slides with this UV ozone cleaner. So if you just open up the compartment here, you can see that there's this space that you're able to set all of your glass slides in, like so. And you can line up however many you need as well as your cover slips. Once you're done with that, once you're done loading them all in, you're going to close the compartment, turn this switch on. It's already on for the moment. Then you hit start stop to turn on the timer. Currently it's set at 15 minutes. Then you hit it again to start. Once this is done, you will hear an alarm go off and you can come and collect your glass slides and cover slips. Once you have all of those prepared, you are able to then add a spacer to these to essentially begin loading your sample. So to start, we use Scotch tape, which has about 52 microns of thickness. And since we want a uniform thickness of our sample to be around 100 microns, we use 2 layers of this. One important thing to note is that Scotch tape does not absorb our polymer samples, so it's very helpful to use these so that our thickness does not vary very much. It's also important to note that we could use masking tape in this case because this one has a thickness of around exactly 100 microns. However, masking tape could absorb your polymer resin sample and therefore generally it might not be very viable to use due to that thickness. So now we're going to apply the Scotch tape to our slides. And essentially, like I said before, we're going to use 2 layers of this to get that approximately 100 micron thickness of our sample. So when you do the second layer, you want to make sure you get very close to being exactly on top of the previous layer. And then you just slide across to try and reduce any amount of bubbles that might be there. So now we just do the bottom the same way we did the top. Trying to get a approximately 1 inch by 1 inch area in the center of our glass slides there. So now we just need 1 more for the bottom. And you can do this for however many number of glass slides you may need. But for this example, we're only using 3. So now that we have all of our glass slides taped, spacers are on, we take just a razor and you go ahead and slice the edges to get that tape off and free our slides. So now we have these glass slides that are no longer taped to the table, and we can separate these again with the razor just by lifting them up a little bit and slicing right at the tape. And now it's free. So now I'll just do the other one just for simplicity. And now we have our spacers. So once you have your glass slides prepared with a spacer, you're able to now take it and add your sample with the cover slip. So to do this, we are going to add a uniform volume of our sample. So using this micro syringe set to 20 microliters, we're going to take one of our tips and our sample, and we're going to add 60 microliters to this area on our glass slide, so that we have a total of 60. So we are going to do this 3 times. It's important to note that you might get some bubbles that appear, and to reduce those, sometimes it helps to tap them. If not, just kind of try to move them to the side because the UV light will only really hit the middle of the sample. So if you can move them as far over as possible, that will help keep those away from any UV light that might be detected. So now we go ahead and we take our cover slip, flip it upside down so that the UV cleansed side is facing and touching the sample. and just sandwich the sample right between those two. And you can see immediately the sample begins to fill out that volume. So from here, now we take our sample and we add it to these 3D printed pieces that we had from before. So to start, you want to make sure that you take your ILT detector head first and place it in this bottom piece. Next, you take this aperture and add it on top to keep this surface uniform and flat. Now you add in your sample that we had just prepared, and you can see it fits very nicely. We add this middle piece now to cover that and keep any light out. And then we put this top piece in, which also helps to keep the light out and holds our UV light source, our light head. So now taking that piece, make sure the cap is taken off, place it in that hole there, and also make sure your ILT detector is now on and your UV light source is also on. So from there, we are able to take these weights now and add them on either side of the apparatus, which helps pinch the sample on the edges to essentially keep the thickness from changing. So now that our ILT detector has booted up, you can see that we have all of these various buttons to click. But specifically, when you want to run your sample, we go to trend tall and make sure that you're in units of watts per centimeter squared, which you can see we are currently in. From there, once you're ready to record your sample, you hit record on the bottom and immediately hit start on your UV light source. And you can see now that the UV light is able to penetrate our sample and essentially give us our data that we're looking for. From that, we are able to essentially export this data and form our plots, which will be in another video.